Am I here? Yes, I'm here. I'm live. This something new I've done for my YouTube site, which I will be sharing on my blog and others. One of the things I've been doing since lockdown is looking at reviews, and among them are reviews of James Bond films, of which I can recommend Kelvin Dyson, who does excellent, very entertaining, very witty, and yet succinct and to the point reviews of Bond films. And I've been somewhat inspired by this. So I've ended up writing up my own list of Bond films in order from what I really don't like to my favourite. There are caveats involved. I never take Bond films or James Bond seriously. You can't. He's a sexist, misogynistic dinosaur, as M called him in GoldenEye. But obviously, it's only human to like and dislike a number of things. So very succinctly and quickly, I'm going to be giving 30-second reviews of each Bond film. And let's see how we go, or less than. Number 26, Casino Royale, the 1967 film version. I think we can all agree it is a mess. It is a chaotic mess. It could have been so much better had Charles K. Feldman showed a bit more nous. I mean, he had the money, he had the cast, a lot could have been done. He could have even done better with a Bond spoof, as they showed Austin Powers, but he didn't, and it became a mess. There's no proper plot. It doesn't thread through. He allowed Peter Sellers to go haywire, although not many could control Sellers, and that's it. Number 25, Live and Let Die. Live and Let Die is a film I appreciate a lot of people like. I'm going to get flamed for this, but the things I don't like about it. I don't like some aspects which strike me as perhaps racism. I don't like the occultic elements in Live and Let Die, which should be a no surprise to some. So it's not a film I watch with comfort, shall I say. But there are things I do like about it. I love the crocodile farm bit. There's one of those, how the heck does Bond get out of this? And I love the speedboat chase, although not necessarily as how Bond dispatches of one of the last of the people who are chasing him. Yaphet Kotto is a brilliant villain in Dr. Kananga. Number 24, Goldfinger. Again, I'm going to get flamed. Fair enough. Why is this so low? I don't know. Sean Connery is not one of my favourite James Bonds. He is good at the role, but there are things I don't like. The misogyny is a bit more ramped up in the 60s, perhaps. I don't know. But there are things to like about Goldfinger. The scene where Bond's talking for his life on that table, as the laser's going up between his legs is quite riveting. The thing that the Aston Martin DB5, the best ever James Bond car. But it's I don't know what it is. It's just not my favourite. Number 23, Doctor No. It's not as good as some of the other Bond films. There's plenty of, but it was the first one, so they had a lot to go with. It's more like a detective thriller. It's one of the ones that's very close to the Fleming novels, although there are some differences. But it is worth having a look. But again, a lot of nasty violence and pleasant misogyny. Number 22, License to Kill. Timothy Dalton's second James Bond film. I suppose part of my problem with License to Kill and with Doctor No and indeed Live and Let Die is they don't altogether feel like Bond movies. License to Kill is a good tale of someone out for revenge. But it doesn't quite feel like a Bond film, although the tension is good. And Franz Sanchez is one of the best James Bond villains, without a doubt. If I did a list of top 10 Bond villains, Franz Sanchez would be fairly firmly in that list. And, Carey Lowell as Pam Bouvier, brilliant, one of the best Bond girls. But yeah. Number 21, we're going to get flamed for this. The world is not enough. Again, I don't have a problem so much with it. I suppose the problem is it's what doesn't. There's nothing that grabs me so much as what I dislike. If I was to do this list again, perhaps The World's Not Enough would be fairly higher up the list. But yeah, it's good to see an assembly of characters like we did in the latter Roger Moore era really come to the fore. It's good to have the main Bond villain being a woman. Spoiler alert there. But yeah, number 20, The Man with the Golden Gun. I like and dislike this film intensely. There are things I intensely like about it, there are things I intensely dislike about it. The misogyny. Roger Moore is not at his best as Bond here. He really isn't. He's trying to make him like Sean Connery and it doesn't work. That said, Christopher Lee is one of the most chilling Bond films ever, the Scaramanga. That line, no, he won't be leaving. He says to the Chinese authorities they turn Bond's planes around that he's got a guest for lunch. It always sends chills down my spine. The Scaramanga's fun house where he has villains dispatched. Yeah, it's a there are things I like and things I don't like. And I love the Queen Elizabeth boat in Hong Kong Harbour, the wreck of it and so forth. Yeah, yes. But also something else. The use of film is not good. It looks like 70s TV film, and it feels that the gap between that and The Spy Left Me was more like 5 or 6 years, not 2.5. But it feels like it's not got. You can't see the money on the screen. Bit more than 30 seconds, but keeping going. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I think that's number 18. Diamonds Are Forever. Maybe I've got a problem or a love-hate attitude to Tom Mankiewicz's screenwriting, but I love the wit, I love the humour. I don't like the way he writes women, but it's, again, you don't see much of the money on the screen, and Guy Hamilton's use of film, what sort of film frame he uses, is of no help whatsoever. I feel bad saying this. Guy Hamilton is not one of my favourite Bond film directors. He has his qualities, he's brilliant in many ways, but yeah. And yeah, Charles Gray is good as Blofeld, but he's not one of the best Bond villains. Well, no, he obviously has his camp charm. Mr. Winter, Mr. Kidno, one of the best Bond henchmen. They really unnerve me. And yeah, like everything else, from this point on, where it has its good points, it has its good points. Number 17. Oh, I'm going to get flayed for this not being at the bottom of this. Never Say Never Again. Okay, let's. It's a below par Bond film. It really is. The soundtrack is not fitting for a Bond film. You know, it feels like you've walked into a late 70s, early 80s French discotheque. It just does not. Yeah. I don't know. It's just in some ways awful. But Klaus Maria Bradanauer is one of the best Bond villains and one of the best Bond henchwomen, Fatima Blush, who's played by Barbara Carrera. And you can see echoes of that with Barbara Carrera's character in GoldenEye with Zenyon atop, and Dominic Green in Quantum of Solace does feel like Maximilian Largo, played by Klaus Maria Bradanauer. Number 16. Yeah, Die Another Day. Awful. Overuse of CGI, unnecessary. Holes in the script. It is just feels rushed, and it has an air of unnecessary smugness. But Miranda Frost, one of the, good. I always like, the sort of traitor element in henchmen or villains, and also the femme fatale. That's good. And yes, Jinx is one of the best Bond girls. And I do love the rapid change of location. But the Ice Palace was good, but I mean the laser bit and the water crashing off the cliff and Bond using the parachute. Oh, it's just awful. Number 15, Quantum of Solace. Yeah, it's not as good as Casino Royale, but I think Casino Royale did set a very high bar. But it's not really one of. It's a bit rushed, perhaps. Maybe they should have left it here. They certainly haven't done a 2-year gap ever since. The end is good. The end's very good when he finds Vesper's supposed boyfriend. But yeah, it's again Dominic Green, what a good Bond villain. I love the hotel in the Bolivian desert. Oh, General Grado, he's a really nasty individual, isn't he? But yeah, that's not much to say. It's a bit of a bland one, I think. Number 14, Spectre. A lot could have been done better for this. I know people either really like it or they really hate it. But I love the car chase scene in Rome. A bit goes to Vatican. I love parts of the music. I like what they're trying to do with the plot. Mr. White's daughter, all of that kind of thing. It feels like the old Fleming novels. And Ralph Fiennes is a cracking M. He really is. Blofeld, but I'm glad to see he's back. Number 13, Tomorrow Never Dies. Again, not as good as GoldenEye. I think there's the curse of the second Bond film with a lot of the Bonds, isn't there? That Sean Connery and Pierce Brosnan, to a certain extent, but I am using Pierce Brosnan as an example here, they're not as good as the first one. Man with the Golden Gun, License to Kill, Quantum of Solace, and Tomorrow Never Dies is good, but it didn't do so well at the box office as GoldenEye. It's an excellent film, but didn't do as well as GoldenEye. But yeah, I love the idea that the baddie is a media baron, and Jonathan Pryce is very good. Waylon is played by Michelle Yeoh, as one of my favourite Bond girls, and yeah, it's good in many respects. And the motorcycle chase in Saigon, I think was good. Number 12, Octopussy. It's I like the idea of smuggling being a cover for a nuclear bomb attack, and Steven Berkoff is one of the best Bond villains, and Louis Jourdan as Kamal Khan, particularly charming. And yes, Maud Adams as Octopussy is one of the best Bond girls, and it should have been, if that was Roger Moore's last Bond film, he would have left on a high. Number 11, I'm so going to get flamed again. A View to a Kill. A View to a Kill. There's like The Man with the Golden Gun, there's a lot to say against it, but the things that are good about it are very good. It was the first Bond film. I sort of remember Never Say Never Again coming out, but my confusion of Connery being a previous Bond, I thought it was a re-release of a Bond 60s Bond film. I was very young at the time. But A View to a Kill, I think, was first one I remember coming out. I didn't see it for some while afterwards. Christopher Walken's one of the best Bond villains as Max Owen. Completely bonkers, completely dangerous. I mean, it sends chills. The Rolls Royce being put into that lake. I mean, there's something terrifying about that. I can't explain it, but something terrifying. The way they stay and wait to see Bond drown, and yet he manages to use the tires and the. But yeah, it's. In many ways, it's not good. It was perhaps would have been better fitted for Timothy Dalton's Bond, and the script rewritten slightly to couch him. But again, where it's good, it's good. And I mean, the idea of the plot about the San Andreas Fault being used in the Silicon Valley, it's good. But again, it's not the ideas, it's the execution that's the problem. Number 10, Thunderball. I like the idea. Some of what Kelvin Dyson, who really doesn't like the film, has said has struck a chord with me. Giving too much of the plot away, etc. But Emilio Largo, brilliant Bond villain. Fiona Volpe, brilliant henchwoman. Domino Duval, brilliant Bond girl. It's really good. I think Bernard-Lee as M has got it. It's one of the films where he's got it quite. I mean, he's always good as M, but it's one of those where he's at it. It's one of his best films as M. You get the crustiness and the gentility very well mixed together. Talking which, number 9, Moonraker, which was Bernard-Lee's last Bond film as M. Moonraker is it's my guilty pleasure, really. It was one of the very first Bond films I saw, plus another one which is further up on the list. My love of James Bond comes from Moonraker and the other film that I'll mention later. It's over the top. The baddie HQ is in outer space. It's all about the threat of all mankind. But plenty of dry humour, plenty of camp humour, plenty of wit and dry wit. I enjoyed the chase scene in Venice because of the humour, not because of, whether it's OTT or not. And I think, as I said, Bernard-Lee did a very brilliant last performance as M, especially that scene where they talk after confronting Drax, which almost has echoes in the novel, M meeting Drax and not trusting him. And and Holly Goodhead is just about my favourite Bond girl. She's, intelligent, clever, resourceful. Number 8, Skyfall. It's a bit of a different Bond film to the others. There's not really a main Bond girl as such. Most of the action takes place in the UK, rather in some exotic location. It's basically, it's very good. It's about a villain, Raoul Silva, who has a grudge against M. It was, I think it's no spoiler to say, it was Dame Judi Dench's last Bond film, is it? And let's count cameo Inspector. And it's a good farewell piece. I would be nice to see other M's get similar farewell piece, especially Bernard-Lee. But brilliant film. Number 7, For Your Eyes Only. One of Roger Moore's best. It's Roger Moore's gritty Bond film. It's some Bond films feel like it's a film made for another James Bond that another actor's walked in. Like Sean Connery's walked into a Roger Moore Bond film in Diamonds Are Forever. Timothy Dalton's walked into a Pierce Brosnan Bond film with The Living Daylights, which is probably more than a coincidence if you know the history about that. For Your Eyes Only feels like Roger Moore walking into a Timothy Dalton Bond film had Timothy Dalton started at that time. I loved the final confrontation with Blofeld at the beginning and the way the helicopter was all wired up. I like Julian Glover as Chris Datos. I love the Karen B-like character Columbo, played by Topol. It's a good film in some respects. It's much enjoyable, and I think over time that's grown. Was it number 8? Number 7, From Russia with Love. From Russia with Love is the second Bond film. There's a lot I don't like about it, but I love it. Like Doctor No, it's almost like a detective film. Sort of 39 steps more than the Bond film type that we saw later. You see Blofeld for the first time, and I love the fact that Blofeld in this one and in Thunderball, which I mentioned earlier, you don't see his face. He doesn't interact with Bond. They're aware of each other's existence, perhaps. Well, they are aware of each other's existence, but they've never met at this point. And Blofeld comes across as really cold and sinister. Brilliant villains in Lot Diana as Rosa Klebb, and Robert Shaw, who was brilliant in almost anything he did, as Donald Grant, the henchman, and one of the most cold villains, Don Grant. Even years later, watching that confrontation scene with Bond on the Orient Express, where Bond is on his knees, almost begging for his life. there's that sense of fear that you feel for Bond. And I, that Grant's about to kill him in cold blood, and it's only his greed that saves Bond's life. So yeah. 1, 2, 3. Number 6, You Only Live Twice. I saw it again recently. There is a fair bit of sexism I really, really noticed for the first time that I don't like. However, I love the Lewis Gilbert Bond films. I really do. And the iconic henchman volcanic setup, that was good. The Donald Pleasance as Blofeld, just the right note between the sort of Blofeld we saw in From Russia with Love and Thunderball and what we saw since. And if only they had kept the same actor, we'd have had a different Blofeld in the other ones, but we would have perhaps seen a more consistent one and a villain that would have more gone behind. I think it's a great failing of Cubby Broccoli and Harry Saltzman, that with the characters of Felix Leiter and Ernst Stavro Blofeld, they changed the actors per film. It didn't really help how we saw the characters and etc. But it is, the locations in Japan, brilliant. Yeah, and that scene where you think, oh, is he going into space? The first time you see it, when he Bond disguised himself as one of the astronauts working for Spectre. These are the top 5 now. These are the ones I really regard as vague. Number 5, the Casino Royale, the 2006 version of Daniel Craig. When I left that Bond film at cinema in Birmingham with my then girlfriend in 2006, I knew I'd seen this was a classic Bond film. It's hardly ever you go to a Bond film cinema and you leave thinking you have seen one of the best made. They really took their time on this, and I think rebooting the series helped a lot. They kept as close to the original novel as they did, and yet kept it for a 21st century audience and kind of toned down what needed to be toned down. The character of Bond, Daniel Craig nailed it first time. Connery and Moore never nailed their respective Bonds first time, as in the character and everything. Daniel Craig nailed it that first Bond film. He really got the character, and you felt it was a character. And at the final scene, you felt he had earned the right to say the name's Bond, James Bond. And I'm not really into gambling and casino scenes, but my goodness, they did make those scenes and that game of poker between Le Chiffre and Bond very watchable in terms. Right, number 4, Living Daylights. This is more of an emotional reason, perhaps, than anything else. The Living Daylights is first Bond film sort of cinema. You've got to bear in mind that if all you ever knew of Bond was Connery and Moore, and only saw On Her Majesty's Secret Service once or twice, to see a brand new James Bond in the 80s, everything else that was around it, it's. I think Timothy Dalton, had he continued, could have made a really excellent Bond. I prefer him in The Living Daylights to License to Kill. I love the plot. I love the relationship with Cara Malovi, the Bond girl played by Mariam Garbo. And Whitaker isn't that good of him, but Koskov is suitably slimy as a henchman. And, there is much I like about it. I still readily watch it if I see it on television. Number 3, On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Now, this isn't really about whether or not George Lazenby is a good James Bond or not. This is about the film itself. And I think nearly everyone agrees the film is excellent. It's very close to the source novel. It's seen a very vulnerable side of Bond falling in love and get married, although obviously that tragically, for obvious reasons, didn't last. Telly Savalas is suitably menacing as Blofeld. Although I think his reasons for what he wants to do is a bit misplaced. It doesn't really fit. It feels part Bond film, part detective story. And yeah, if George Lazenby had done a few more Bond films and he'd been ironed out a bit more, maybe we'd have seen, because in some scenes, Lazenby gives a cracking performance as Bond. And in others, he doesn't. Maybe another 2 or 3 Bond films and we would have seen Good one. Number 2, GoldenEye. GoldenEye, Viva says, it was like Casino Royale. I'd left that thinking I'd seen one of the best Bond films made. And yeah, it's Pierce Brosnan's first Bond film. I love the way they tackled the fact that Bond is a moral mess and a human mess. We love the things we love about the character Bond, but we can't avoid the fact he's a messed up human being who, if we met in real life, we probably wouldn't like, and would probably steer clear of in some respects. But yes, I love the fact they tackled that side. I love the fact that his former 00 agent was the Bond villain. I mean, how's Q these days? Still press here, do I? It's very good the way, the Bond villain who knows all those little tricks. It's very good. I much enjoy it, and I still watch it. And Alan Cumming really made Boris Grishenko, the henchman, they're very entertaining. I'm the greatest. And I poor attempt at a Russian accent. But yes. Number 1, there are better Bond films. I know they're better Bond films. They're better written Bond films. There's more morality, more nuance, more emotional expedition, more action, everything than this. But it has to be The Spy Who Loved Me. It's the first Bond film I saw that earliest Bond memory is that Lotus crashing into water. I mean, brilliant car. It's got everything that people like about Bond films is in this. They really worked at this to make sure that the series would continue. It's Roger Moore's third Bond film. It's very much his Goldfinger. I'm not too keen on Barbara Bacca's Anya Massacre as far as the fact I don't think something went wrong there. The character's well written. I'm not denigrating Barbara Bacca's acting, but somewhere there's a disconnect. But otherwise, very good. I love the fact that you've got a Soviet agent, a British agent joining forces. I love the little niggles that both the people in the KGB and MI6 let each other know they know all their secrets. So I love the one, for example, Massacre saying to Q, "Good morning, Major Boothroyd." The subtext being, "I know what your name is," and the way Q doesn't even bat an eyelid. It's very good. I love the reference to Her Majesty's Secret Service with Bond's past. Jaws is a bit more menacing and less comedic in this one, but Jaws is always interesting to watch. Sometimes he's not entertaining to watch. He's actually quite frightening in one or two of these scenes. But it is, and the music by Marvin Hamlish. I haven't mentioned the music in this video, have I? John Barry's done some fantastic score work in some of these films, notably on Her Majesty's Secret Service, Diamonds Are Forever, A View to a Kill, he's Living Daylights, and even back to Thunderball, he does fantastic scores, John Barry. But Marvin Hamlish has really done come to town with this. And what can I say? No Bond film does it better, perhaps. But Lotus, I love the Lotus, but I mean, it doesn't carry as much as the Aston Martin DB5 because the Lotus is of its time. There's something timeless about the Aston Martin. So those are my quick, nearly half-hour reviews of Bond films, and I hope I haven't bored you too much. I haven't scripted this. I've just spoken off the top of my head when each film comes to mind. And I did write a list of the Bond films in order. So my thanks to you all if you're still here bearing up with me. I perhaps could do better reviews than this, but it's 30-second ones. And thanks to Kelvin Dyson to give me the idea indirectly. And and I hope you're managing the lockdown and we get through this soon. Okay, cheers. Bye.